Right, back again. Talk about one of my favorite topics, Jim Morrison and the Doors. I told you in my last video, I did one video prior to this one about Jim Morrison and A Course in Miracles, um, that I had gotten into Morrison and the Doors when I was 11 years old. I was reading No One Here Gets Out Alive by Danny Sugarman, which just came out in, I believe it was 81. That book came out. And I was fascinated. And I ended up reading that book like at least 3 times, voraciously, and hanging on every word. Like many of my generation, I'm Generation X. I think many Generation Xers read that book and got into the Doors because of that book, and had a thing with Jim Morrison because of that book. But anyway, I wanted to continue the discussion, get into some of the things that Jim actually said, talk a little bit more about that Miami incident, the concert in Miami in 1969 that got Jim into trouble. Let me just say, I did a video the other day, some of you might have seen, and it got cut off for some reason. Only 7 minutes came out. It was like a 30-minute video. And so hopefully this one will be okay. And by the way, this is a live chat, so if you want to ask a question or want me to talk about a specific topic, let me know. All right, let's start. Peace and love, man. As John Lennon said, anyone that thinks that peace and love died with the 60s don't know what it is. Peace and love are eternal. And the 60s generation just were tuned in, and it probably had a lot to do with a lot of things that were happening in society. But let's take a few big ones. Obviously, there was the baby boomers. After World War II, there was a big surge in children being born. And not long after, there was the psychedelic revolution, early 60s. Then there was also rock music. Even before the psychedelic revolution, there was rock music. Those are two very big things, right? That had a lot to do with what happened in the 60s. I wanted to just point out, just in case you don't think that this, who cares about Jim Morrison and what relevance does he have to A Course in Miracles? Well, let me just point out that the Doors really were together from 1965 to 1971. Right? That was also the years that A Course in Miracles was scribed. Helen Schuckman scribed the course in those years. There was a lot going on in those years. And this really needs to be talked about, I think. Not just the Doors, obviously, but music and the arts and the hippie movement and the let's call it the counterculture movement, and a lot of the things that came into the world during that time. I think Jim Morrison was just part of a wave that was happening, and he was a big part of that wave. Partly because he was who he was, but also, he was in LA, which is a very important place as far as getting messages out to the world. He started one of the biggest bands he and Ray Manzarek really started one of the biggest bands in the world, up there with the Beatles and the Stones and all the other, Zeppelin and all the other great bands. The Doors take their place, even though many might say otherwise, including members of those other bands, right? They would say that like Jerry Garcia said that Jim Morrison was just a ripoff of Mick Jagger, and doing the same dance moves and so on. And but you know, very few people probably looked into who Morrison really was and really listened to his words and listened to his interviews and maybe got to know him a little better. And you know, I think in general with all of us, you know, to know us is to love us. And if you have anything against your brother, it's probably because you just don't know your brother, right? And you're judging your brother. But you know, so but let's just also say that, as I was saying in my last video, on the surface, Jim Morrison was a drunken fool, um, outrageous and um, hard for people to like, and but actually, not a lot of people loved him and still love him. But there is, you know, maybe a whole segment of society that looks at him as this boorish, um, um, you know, rock star bravado, you know, yelling and screaming and making a fool of himself, and which he probably did enough of. But part part of that, obviously, not obviously, but I think part of that was he was he was doing an act, right? He was doing that purposely. He was testing the limits of reality. You can hear that really well if you listen to the audio of the Miami concert in 1969. You can see how he was drunk, and yet he was also coherent. He was saying a lot of crazy stuff, um, but he was also making a lot of sense. And I think maybe we could talk, and then I'm going to get into, you know, AI, ChatGPT, talking a little bit as well. But let me just say that I listened to the audio the other night, and then I watched Oliver Stone's Doors movie segment of the Miami concert, and it just highlighted how much Oliver Stone, what great license Oliver Stone took with that incident, because much of what the Stone's Doors movie, portrayed did not happen actually. Some of it did, you know, but a lot of it did not. And Jim, for most of that movie, comes off as a jerk and as basically an asshole. And it doesn't give the real sensitive, thoughtful side of him, which was really the main side of him. Keep in mind, let's keep in mind that he was in his 20s. He was a young guy. And I also wanted to, you know, I think all this, before I even go further, you know, this also gets into the subject, which is very relevant and it will continue to be relevant, about how media can change our minds about things. You know, people see Oliver Stone's movie and they think, oh, that's Jim Morrison, that's the Doors, right? Um, and that's unfortunate, and that's, you know, that's why, you know, people watch a certain news program, and if they watch that primarily or only that news program, you know, they're not going to see the whole picture. Right? They're going to get essentially a form of propaganda. Yeah, bud. Let me finish my video, bud. All right, but after I'm done, okay, bud? Just let me just finish this video.
Instead on your phone.
Bring me my phone, and then
I don't know where your phone even is.
Can you just wait till I'm finished? I'll be done in a second, bud. I'll be done in a second. All right.
I want kind of. I'm thinking use like your computer because your phone is weird. If I click on a picture and I click on there and I click on another one, it goes back to the one that it was starting on.
All right. Well, let me just finish this, okay? I'll be right in, bud. So
this paper is making us make an entire poster.
all right, yeah, bud. I'll be in soon, bud. All right, so let's just talk about the Miami concert for a moment. Um, um, First of all, Jim, there was a court case that was brought against Jim Morrison after that. Lewd and lascivious behavior, something like that. They people were disgusted. Some of the audience came away disgusted. People claim that he exposed himself, but like over 100 pictures were taken um, of Jim during the concert, and none of them show his genitals exposed. I highly doubt that he did. He just was not that kind of person, even though he was drunk and he was kind of he was teasing the crowd, and he was trying to incite people to come up, and he was saying things like, "Isn't anyone gonna love my ass? I'm lonely. I'm really lonely. I need someone to come up here and love my ass." Um, and I think of that in terms of like, let's definitely bring politics into this too. I think of Donald Trump. Another clown who basically, I think that's what it's all coming from with him as well. Well, for all of us, we just we're looking for love, but we're looking for love maybe in some weird ways, ways that are not really, you know, we're not going to find love in that particular way. Um, but lots to say about that concert. I think the main thing is that listen to the audio if you really want a better idea of what actually happened. Don't watch the Oliver Stone movie. It's kind of a cool scene in the movie. I'll give it that, but it's it's not true. But real real life is not real life, right? REEL is not REEL life. So if you want the to get closer to the truth, you actually have to go to the source, right? So you have to really listen to the music, read Jim's poetry, listen to his interviews. Anyway, moving on, let's talk a little bit. And I put in the description here some of what my discussion with ChatGPT was. So some quotes from Jim. "Wake up" from Celebration of the Lizard, the song Celebration of the Lizard. Jim screams, "Wake up!" Right? Many people, probably before and after, have said this. Right? Today we have, for example, Gavin Newsom, saying about Trump, if you think that Trump isn't looking for a one-party system, and isn't going to go even more authoritarian, and this is just the start of this authoritarian takeover, you need to wake up. Right? He uses that language as wake up, and I think there's that's a good message actually, politically speaking. But really, we're getting what we're talking about. I think what Jim was talking about is something deeper, which is the inner journey, right? That going deep in your consciousness and understanding the mystery of life. Um, did Jim fully get there himself? Well, let's just say this. Um, he did early on, even before the Doors got together. He was doing a lot of LSD. He was living up on this rooftop, and he was having these amazing acid trips. And in the trips, he was seeing like these. He called it the mythic like a mythic rock concert playing out. And this is visionary on his part, that he was obviously visualizing something that was going to happen, and he actually brought some of that to life, with the Doors. But I think we can't discount the fact that he did quite a bit of LSD. early on. Then he got more into alcohol. That might have been, I think he was doing that consciously. Maybe he had taken enough LSD. Who knows? I like to read more about that and find out, what his thoughts on LSD were as the 60s progressed, because what happened on a larger scale was that a lot of youth were into LSD in the early to mid 60s, and then what happened was there was a movement away from LSD. People began to say, like the Beatles, well, we did that, but now we realize there's nothing like being clean and drug free. Maybe Morrison had the same attitude. I don't know. I doubt he did. I think Morrison saw the benefits of it and probably wouldn't put it down like that, because I think putting LSD down is a mistake too. Right? To just discount it and say, oh, no, oh, we had these great mystical experiences with LSD, but nah, yeah, who needs that stuff? um, so that's one thing. Um, so I think Morrison, he was approaching the spiritual reality of of existence. He was definitely, obviously, thought a lot about death. He wrote a lot about death. His songs, the words "the end" show up quite often from the first album. Right, there's the end, the song "the end" on the first album, and then you have the end, um, when the music's over, turn off the lights. The music is your only friend until the end, right? And then the last album, "L.A. Woman," he's got he's got Hyacinth House, where he says, and I'll say it again, I need a brand new friend. The end. um, so he brought the end into quite a few songs, and it's quite funny. I think he's not given us enough credit for being a funny, it, it, almost a comedian, definitely a clown. Um, and I always thought that he was this really serious guy, but then I started realizing, he's actually really funny. And, he seems serious, like in some of his songs and some of his moods on stage, for sure. But anyway, um, so Wake Up, ACIM. This is a Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. Both are about the inevitability of awakening. The only choice is when. Yeah, so saying wake up means that you can wake up, right? So when Jim said wake up, he understood, and this is not wake up like wake up or else. This is wake up because you you're dreaming, right? This is not reality. What is happening here? There's something deeper, right? And the Course is saying the same thing. Maybe not exactly the same thing, but again, let's keep in mind that Jim was still a young man. He didn't know everything. He hadn't lived and really explored all these things. By the way, the other band members were into transcendental meditation. That's where they all met. But Jim was not into meditation. He wasn't into yoga or India, as far as we know. That did not attract him, apparently. Although we could look into that. Um, you know, maybe there's something that I'm not aware of. Although I did read quite a bit about Jim to do my paper, and just out of interest in Jim Morrison and the Doors. But anyway, um, there are things known and things unknown, and in between are the doors. This is one of Jim's famous sayings early on. ACIM says perception is a mirror, not a fact, and what I look on is my state of mind reflected outward. Both frame the world as an in-between state, a reflection, a threshold, rather than ultimate reality. right? And don't forget the the famous song from the first album, "Break On Through to the Other Side." Um, and Jim was really talking about a mystic understanding, um, and that song is him at maybe his most mystical, and and he saw the Doors as a band that was like a portal to other dimensions.
Look, this is the first time we can see them doing it. See, they're doing.
Yeah, bro.
They're gonna get the honey, the honey from the bees.
Yeah, bud.
And they're gonna put it in a jar after. But they had to scrape the honey off first.
I'm almost done, bud. I'm almost done. Let me just finish the video, okay? Let me just finish. All right, so don't forget that Jim, the name The Doors came from William Blake originally. If the doors of perception are cleansed, then we would see things as they truly are, infinite. And then Aldous Huxley wrote his book, The Doors of Perception, which was based on his experience with mescaline. Hey, bud, let me do this. Let me do my video, bud. So it was all based on really like mystic visionary poetry and ideas and psychedelics. So I don't think that the Course would necessarily use the term break on through. It would be more of like, just recognize the ego is unreal. Because you don't need to destroy anything. You don't need to break anything. You don't need to kill the ego. You just need to recognize that the ego is illusory. Number 3, there can't be any large-scale revolution until there's a personal revolution on an individual level. It's got to happen inside first. Now, I'm not sure when Jim said that, but that's exactly, what the Course is saying as well. And he was probably commenting on what was happening in the 60s, that people were revolting, were doing revolution, but he was telling his brethren, his peers, listen, you got to change your own mind first, right? Then maybe the world is going to change a little bit, but first it's an inside job, right? You can't fight against the system and think that, and come at it from a place of anger and bitterness and revenge and revolt, but rather, you change your own mind and you become a person of peace and love, and you embody that, and then maybe you have a better chance of changing the world. People fear death even more than pain. Life hurts a lot more than death. ACIM says, death is the central dream from which all illusions stem. Is it not madness to think of life as being born, aging, losing, and dying? Both challenge the ego's core attachment, fear of death. Jim brings that up in the song "The Soft Parade." is a great song. It's not as well known of a song of the Doors, but it's a really good one in terms of Jim talking about how we how our society tends to delude ourselves about life and death, and we have a fear. And if nothing else, you can see that Jim was working on freeing himself of fear, and he realized that any fear is in the way. 5, I think of myself as an intelligent, sensitive human being with the soul of a clown, which always forces me to blow it at the most important moments. Maybe like the Miami concert, who knows? Maybe he thought that was him blowing it, being a clown. But in a lot of ways, that concert was very important in terms of, again, testing the limits and and of him showing, the absurdity of life, and I think testing his audience, testing who was really willing to go with him on the journey and who was not. ACIM says the ego enjoys studying itself and carefully identifies with what it does. The ego is not strong enough to survive without constant judgment. Morrison's calm mirrors the ego's sabotage. Both revealed the absurdity of taking the self too seriously. One thing you can see about Morrison is that he could laugh at himself. Right? He didn't take himself too seriously. Number 6, the most important kind of freedom is to be what you really are. ACIM, I am as God created me. Both point to true identity. Freedom lies in remembering our unchanging self. There's a lot more. There's so many other quotes that we could bring in here. Anyway, I put some stuff in the description. There's too much talking over here, so I'm gonna end this now and do part 3 soon. And hopefully this was helpful. Yeah, keep on rocking in the free world. What else can we say? Right now, but I'm coming in. Yeah. Keep on rocking in the real world, and we'll see you very soon. Thanks for tuning in.